What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Gen Z Money Podcast, where we turn financial peace to your reality. I'm your host, James Bowman, and today's guest on the show is Joseph Hadaway from the Work Hard, Retire Early podcast. It's a podcast that's super duper similar to mine, where he talks about, getting on the financial independence and the financial freedom journey. That way you can enjoy your life. Actually enjoy your life. I mean, that's just the way to put it when it comes to finances. Like, you're going to hear his story about how he was, I'm not going to lie, he was like the scum of the scum at one point of his life, but he ended up turning that around. And he even admits that what he was doing was kind of frowned upon. So it's a great journey of not only redemption, but also education, right? So I really hope that you guys get some nuggets from this, and hopefully he drops a lot of tips to get you guys to stay away from people like payday lenders or predatory lenders, because those are the absolute enemy of retiring early and reaching financial peace and saving and investing. I mean, the interest rates they charge, we talk about, is absolutely ridiculous. So I really hope you guys get a lot of information from this interview, but I don't want to take too much away from them, guys. So let's go ahead and get into my interview with Joseph. What's going on, Joseph? Welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast, man. How you doing today?
Hey, doing well. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate you coming on, man. I've been absorbing a lot of your content lately, and it's actually kind of scary how in line we are with a lot of the things we talk about. And it's like, you started your podcast in November. I started my podcast in November. I release an episode weekly. You release an episode weekly. And it's kind of scary, man. I'm not going to lie. We got a lot in common, man.
I was looking over yours too and thought the exact same thing. It's almost like looking in a mirror.
Exactly. That's why I look forward to the conversation, man, because I feel like we're on the same page for a lot of things. But I don't want to waste too much time, man. Let's jump right into the conversation. Let's go back to little Joseph, right? Like toddler Joseph. Let's say 5 years old, right? How was money talked about and viewed as you grew up?
I will say I like to joke about this a lot with people. My parents only brought up money when I broke something expensive.
Yeah.
But that is a joke in itself, but it's also not too far off from the truth. In our household, we were a single income household. My dad worked. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Bless her soul. I think she had the harder job of the two. But, back into the money, we didn't talk about it much at all. We knew we had enough. We had a roof over our heads. Meals were never an issue. So it was never really brought up at all. Mm. We definitely knew who in the area had more money, who had less. But you could see it just from size of house, niceness of the car. And that was always discussed on a must be nice kind of way, but never really gone into, I wonder how they got that way.
So, okay. I mean, but was there ever any envy when it came to like looking at other people, or maybe like a jealousy thing?
I think that's a really fair take. Yes, there definitely was with that. Especially, I remember specifically a neighbor down the road getting a brand new sports car at one point growing up, which my family absolutely, there was no way we could afford that. And there was definitely a lot of envy, and my eyes, my parents' eyes. I would have been 10 maybe at the time. And we definitely were content in ourselves, but the envy of people who had more money was definitely there.
Gotcha. And you know what? That's not, I want to say, like, that's not so uncommon. You know what I mean? I wish it was more common to where, like you just pointed out, it was never like how did they do it? So maybe I can replicate it. I wish that was a bit more common though.
Amen to that. 100% on that. I think that is, honestly, I don't have kids of my own, but when I do, that's the first thing I'm instilling in them is, instead of being envious, look at how they did it and how do you replicate it?
Yeah, I think that's a great value to instill, because I feel like, especially in America, if someone has something, it means that you can have it too.
Oh yeah.
So it's not of whether or not you can have it. It's how do I get it, right?
Amen to that. 100% agree.
So because money wasn't talked about as you grew up, at what point did you realize that you kind of had to take control of your finances? Like what caused the change?
I mean, I can't point a specific event and example. I've definitely got a few. I mean, I remember my first job when I was 16 or 17 working at a country club. My manager just up and quit one day because he had made enough money off of stocks and trading, holding, whatever, that he didn't really have to work anymore. Dude was 40 some odd and had just done really, really well. And I started thinking, and then got into college. And at one point I was working 2 jobs, living in a crappy apartment, trying not to fail out of school. And I mean, I was making more than enough money to afford the apartment, but I wasn't living on a budget. So, I mean, there was a wake up call there too, with the idea of I've got to do something to improve my situation. There's no reason someone making the kind of money I am and even working 2 jobs should be living in this, I mean, crap hole is what it was, skipping meals because I couldn't afford all of them. But I think my biggest thing is, again, another college story. At one point I was working, one of my jobs was a loan shark, and we were selling personal loans. APR is generally around 70-80%. And I'd have people, I mean, could be my grandmother, could be my brother, anywhere in that age range, sitting there across me on the desk, praising God. I'm so happy. Oh my God, I got this $5,000 loan that we're giving you, an 8-year term on 75% APR. And I, knew enough that I'm like, that's killing people. That's this one-time hit of cash is not sustainable. And I kind of got, a mindset of, well, for one, there's not enough financial education in the world. And number 2, how do I change my circumstance to not be like theirs?
So you were kind of like a payday lender. Is that what it was?
That exactly. Yes.
Okay, man. I tell you what, I will. Okay, I'm gonna preface this by saying you've come a long way from that point. But if I had to make a top 5 list, they're definitely on my top 5 list of most hated people. And that's nothing to attack you personally, but as you already stated, you understand the ramifications of those things. Like an 80% loan it should be illegal. Like,
amen to that. Luckily, we've since moved to Florida where it is. Could not be happier for that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, true. I tell you what, and I guess I'm kind of thankful that I never ended up getting into that position, and I can also now advise people how to get away from that position and not do it, because like I said, they are the top one of, I'd say they're probably number 2 with worst hated financial professions in my opinion, just because it seems as though they prey, because it's not the wealthy people that are falling for it. It's not the financially literate people who are taking out these loans. It's the people who are ignorant, who haven't had financial literacy in their life, that are actually, taking out these loans, and it's keeping them where they are.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely who we saw. I mean, we never had anybody walk through the door who made more than 50,000 a year. I mean, a lot of times we got questions of like, what is the stock market? What is a budget? What is credit? And like you said, it's extremely predatory on the people who just didn't know any better. This was the only way of life they knew because they'd never been taught otherwise.
But you know what, man, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's kind of not many people will admit to that, right? Like admit to, like, I did predatory lending, like I was there. Okay.
Yeah.
I admit that I was giving out bad loans to people. And I appreciate you admitting that, because a lot of times people that are in that position, they know in their heart that they're doing wrong, but it's their job. So I appreciate you coming to that. So what steps, once you realize, like, okay, I really need to get control of my finances, I need to, buckle down, start saving, start investing, start paying off debt, whatever the case was, What steps did you start taking in order to start building wealth?
I mean, I would definitely say my first step was I looked down, I got in a budget, looked at my expenses versus my income. And I mean, I realized that as a 20-year-old sophomore in college on an apartment that was $500 a month, I was making between 35 and 40 a year. I mean, that's when I started like, wow, I'm wasting a lot of money on stuff that doesn't matter. I had maybe 3, 4K in savings, which was not bad, and maybe 1,000 or two invested. But I, on top of that, had 5, 6 grand in credit card debt. I'd taken out a loan on a vehicle that I was barely affording. And again, I was living below my means, but not because I exactly wanted to. So my first step was, get on a budget. And I'm going to shout out now. I'm not the biggest fan of all of his teachings, but Dave Ramsey is who I found first. And I took some of his financial peace courses, and that really got me on the right track. I've veered from that path a little bit now, but sitting down with, a budget template and an actual teacher helped a lot. And, then from there came the debt snowball or the debt payoff plan. How am I getting out of this credit card debt? How am I getting out of this car loan that I just can't afford right now? And, how am I going to get more money in my pocket to save, to invest, to pay off debt? Why am I going out to eat 7 nights a week? It was a huge behavioral and mental change that I had to make inside of myself before I could start, building wealth or even saving more money. I had to change the way I thought about time and just my day-to-day goals. And so instead of think of, how am I going to go out to eat tonight? How am I come down to, how am I going to retire at 40?
Gotcha.
It was all.
So when you created your first budget, because I feel like that is the base of the pyramid, right? If you mess up the base of the pyramid, everything that you do from that point upward is at risk of collapsing because you started off wrong. And that's what the budget is. When you finally started tracking your expenses, you created a budget. Do you remember what your gap was between your total expenses and the actual income?
It actually wasn't as bad as I assumed. It was, I want to say, around $250 a month. Not too much, but I mean, then I sat down, I realized, okay, I was spending $500 on rent, insurance on my car is like $100 a month, Wi-Fi is $50. And that's about where and then groceries I'm spending $100 a month. Then my eating out 5, 6 nights a week was adding up fast, and that was getting close to 1,000, 1,500 a month for both me and my then girlfriend, now fiance, because she's been on this path with me too.
Yeah, that's a lot of eating out, man.
Oh yeah.
That's a budget killer. So, all right. So, you know what? I love this. I want to go down this a little bit further. So you do your budget and you find that your expenses and your income are about the same level, about $250 difference. Looking at that, you're like, okay, now on paper, I've got $250 a month to start using in order to build wealth. Mm-hmm. And you have $6,000 in credit card debt. How was it navigating? Because if you just do the simple math, that would take 6 years to pay off at $250 a month.
Yeah.
That's not even including interest, right? So how did you navigate that portion?
I mean, of course, my first thought was I've got to pay this off immediately. I mean, my credit card at the time was on a 23.99 APR, I believe, which is almost as predatory as the loans I was selling. So of course, I mean, the definition became cutting expenses, because like you said, $250 a month, it's 6 years plus interest to pay it off, which it wasn't going anywhere, to say the least, for $250 a month. So, my navigating personally, for me, I got lucky. There was a very big, easy expense to cut out, which was eating out, buying more groceries. I could feed myself for $100 a week, or I could go out to eat every night for $300 a week. Pretty easy cut. So the main thing for me was cutting out those lifestyle expenses. And then, I kind of did the math on, all right, so if I eat dinner at home tonight, the total cost of the groceries is $5. versus if I'd gone out to eat plus tip would have been 35. Bam, $30 on the credit card Monday night. Repeat Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It added up pretty fast. And actually, I knocked all of that down in probably about 4 or 5 months. Once I started getting serious on everything, to say the least, I drank the Kool-Aid and decided today's the day my life changes.
Yeah, and that's one thing, man. I tell you what, I agree with you. I don't follow every single principle that Dave Ramsey teaches, but if there's one thing this man has figured out is knocking out debt. I am a very, very, very strong advocate of his teachings. I love the debt snowball. I love choosing the mentality over the money, meaning the math works, but it's the mentality that solves the problem. I love it. And for those who do not know what the debt snowball is, I've talked about it a couple of times. Do you mind just explaining real quick what the debt snowball is?
Oh yeah, of course. So basically, Debt Snowball, I know if you talk to some other financial advisors, they refer to it as the Debt Avalanche. Same thing. You take all your debts and you list them smallest to largest, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 down the line, et cetera, how much you have. And first off, you focus everything you've got at paying off that $1,000 debt, make minimum payments on everything else. Then when that thousand's off, you snowball that money, focus everything you got on the next highest debt, minimum payments on everything else. And you just keep going and going and going until absolutely everything is paid off.
Yeah, and I love that method because as you're knocking off this credit card, let's say you have a $500 credit card and you knock it out. That's one credit card payment completely gone out of your life. So all of the money you were throwing at that now goes to the next one. Another term that you mentioned was a debt avalanche, which is kind of the mathematical perfection of debt payoff. Meaning if you want to absolutely maximize the amount of dollars going towards your debt, the debt avalanche is the way to go. Here's the problem. If you're going to, no matter what, 100%, let's just say you dedicate $1,000 a month to your debt to get it paid off, and all else is equal, the debt avalanche will get you there faster. What you don't understand is things come up, right? You get tired and on your way home, you want to pick up food and all of this stuff. That's where the debt snowball takes over because the debt avalanche is paying off your highest interest rate. So if you have an 18% on one thing, a 10% on the other, it makes sense to pay off the 18 first in the debt avalanche. But if that 18 is $10,000, throwing 1,000 at it, it doesn't feel as good as having $1,000 credit card and throwing $1,000 at it and completely cutting out of your life. So I love the debt snowball approach, man. I really do. And I appreciate you defining that for the listeners. And then, you said that you had a car loan, and I think I might get into it a little bit later on the episode, but I'm going to try and stay away from it right now. But for a car loan, we all know that car loans are optional. And you looked at your car loan and you realized, like, I can't do this. I cannot keep this up, right? So what was your style to get rid of the car loan?
You're not going to like this, but I'm going to tell the story anyway. I got really, really lucky. I was driving home from work one night and somebody T-boned me. Car totaled, insurance company paid it off. No out of pocket for me, no injuries. Everyone's fine. We all got up and walked away. Luckily, their insurance covered everything. So I got extremely, extremely lucky there. Of course, no one wants to be in an accident, but I think if there was a time to be in it, that was it for me.
Yeah, I find no issue with you saying that. And here's why. Because when you got that car paid off, you could have went and bought another car. Mm-hmm. You could have went and got a better car, a higher car payment, but you didn't. You realized you took this unfortunate event and you turned it into a blessing. So let's not flow past that. Like, I love that because you could have taken this bad situation and turned it worse by going to get a more expensive car, getting a higher car payment. But instead, you chose not to, and you chose to take the money and use it as a blessing to get rid of the car loan.
I think that's a really, really good way of putting it also. And I mean, not to downplay the luck and the blessing of it. Of course, if I had planned to add the car to the Debt Snowball, but when, that didn't work out. So I went home that night and I took stock of what I had. And I was like, well, work's 15 minutes away, school's 20 minutes away. I really only need me to get a car to get me from point A to point B. I did not have enough in cash at the time from Debt Snowball. Of course, Dave Ramsey, $1,000 emergency fund, then Debt Snowball. So in my area, $1,000 wasn't going to get me a whole lot of car, and wanted something that would run me for a while. So I did end up financing another car, but I went down 4 or 5 model years, because when I originally financed had 1,000 miles maybe. When I drove it off the lot, it was used. And then versus what I had now, I drove it off the lot with closer to 45, 50, paid maybe half price for it. Car payment went down maybe by 60%. And which of course just freed up, I think $250, more a month, which right there was the gap in budget. I'm automatically, and my insurance dropped too, which was also just another perk. And I kind of, my car in the wealth situation I was at the time, which was negative at 0, the lowest it's ever been, I firmly believe it ever will be. I wasn't going to go out and buy a Corvette, a Mustang, something nice. It's not what I needed at the time. And I needed something from point A to point B, get me to work, get back. And that's all I should have been spending on. And thankfully all I did when I went back the second time.
Gotcha. You got what you needed. And,
Amen.
and you ended up cutting down your expenses in the process. So, Joseph, let me ask you this: like, what is your okay, before I get into that question, did you have any other bad debts, like, I would say debts like student loans, or I don't know, child support? I mean, you don't have any kids, but like anything. Did you have anything else?
No, luckily, I talked about, I started my sophomore year at college, which would have put me 19, 20ish. So I did start quite early in my wealth building journey. So, all I really have had in my life was the credit card, the student loan debt, which go to an in-state school, live at home, it's going to keep to a minimum. And then the car debt.
Gotcha. And then what was your student loan debt? What is your student loan debt looking like at this point?
Let's see here. I think over 4 years of college, after scholarships, I took out a total of about $15K, which honestly was a little higher than it should have been, but looking back. And my senior year of college alone, I paid off almost $5K of that. So here I am. I've been out of college a little more than 2 years now. And I can't give you a number off the top of my head, because of course, federal loan interest pause, I'm not looking at it very much, if at all. I don't think I've thrown some cash on it since the pandemic started, but with no payment due, I've focused a lot more on paying off like my car and other debts I've had. And I want to say I'm under 5K now, but I can't give you an exact number, maybe even under 4.
Gotcha. Well, that's still, you're 2/3 of the way there,
Oh yeah.
And you're still relatively young. So, okay. So now I lead that into this next question. What is your overall opinion on debt? Like, are there good debts? Are there bad debts? And how do you differentiate between them all?
Well, in my opinion, there are definitely good debts and there are bad debts. Easy tell on a bad debt is the interest rate. Any interest rate above what you feel your investments will return is a bad interest rate. For example, when I'm running my year-to-year projections on what I expect my brokerage account or my IRA to do, I use 6%, which means any loan with an interest rate above 6%, I'm not going to touch it. That's too high. In my opinion, that is a bad debt. Also look at, like, what are you financing with it? Of course, a mortgage loan, good debt. You're getting an asset out of it. A mortgage loan on like a rental property, short-term, long-term, good debt. You're using that money, you're using that leverage to get cash flow. But then we go back into credit card debt, personal lending. That's more on bad debt because, of course, for one, you're funding lifestyle, which where does that really get you on your wealth building journey? It's 2 steps back, if anything else. And then also, you're talking about that higher interest rate that goes above where you'd want it to be.
Gotcha. So let's talk about student loans, right? Because a lot of people will argue that student loans, their return is your income, as long as of course you're using your degree. So
Yeah.
what's your stance on that?
That is a very situational question. I knew that was going to come up when we were scheduling the interview. I mean, personally, my undergrad is in finance. That has given me a pretty solid 9 to 5. And I feel like 15 grand in student debt for a 9 to 5 that I'm proud of and have, high upward mobility potential and I'm still doing well now. That was a really, really good investment. I'm making, more than 4 or 5 times my initial investment back in my yearly salary. But then, other people I've known who've gone to school for other degrees, and I don't want to call out any one major, but they're not using their degree. I hate to call out somebody particular, but I do have a friend who took about $70K in debt for a music performance degree and is a cashier at the local grocery store. Nothing wrong with a music performance degree. I mean, there's definitely things to do with that in itself, but in his example in particular, he's got this huge mountain of debt, a 13-an-hour job. That is bad debt because the payoff just didn't work.
So you're a proponent of doing the research beforehand, right? Because I would agree with you that investing 15K and let's just call it you're making, it's probably not true. It doesn't matter. Let's just say you're making $45,000 a year off a $15,000 investment. That's a 33% return. That's a pretty good return in year one, right? Mm-hmm. If you make 70, 80, 90, that just, knocks it out of the park. So, wait, I said 33. No, that's a 300% return. See, yes, that's a 300% return on your money, not 33. And so it's a good investment. But as you said, when you're taking out 70K and you're earning 30,000 a year, that's where the return isn't so great on the education that you're getting.
Yeah, definitely great way of putting it. I mean, I hate to say it comes down to jobs and income. Of course, job markets, areas, professions vary wildly, but that really is what it comes down to.
Yeah, but I mean, see, I'm not a big fan of. I like to give credit where credit is due, right? And so I don't like to take the blame away from students. And I might get some flack for saying this, right? But if you're paying, if you're required to pay for something, anything in life, and you don't know what you're getting in return for that amount, you're doing wrong. And so if that's what you're doing with education, if you're paying education, you're giving people a blank check saying, I will pay whatever for this degree, and you have absolutely no idea what you're going to get in return for that degree, that is your fault, right? And that's why we got to start targeting the younger kids. Like my little brother's a prime example. I'm like, bro, you're not going to college unless you know what you're going to get from college. Like you're not going to go there and figure it out, right? You're going to have a plan before you go. And it's a lot. I know it's a lot to ask from younger people to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life, but it's necessary because you could spend that time elsewhere, right?
Oh yeah, and I think you've got a really, really good point about investment and return there. I mean, you don't go to college so much to figure it out, and for a lot of careers, there's no need for a degree. I had a long back and forth with someone on Twitter about this just the other day. I mean, there are definitely better ways to invest 15, 20, 50, 60, 70K than I'm just going to go to school and figure it out while I'm there. That's a lot of money to figure it out.
Because you wouldn't let's just use a realistic example. Let's say someone came to you with a business idea. Like, Joseph, I need 50K. I want to start a business. What would your first response be?
What's that business do?
I don't know, man. I'm going to figure it out once I got the money.
Yeah, no, that's not how
exactly.
That works. Yeah, same thing.
Exactly. And that's literally what student loans are. Is like, I'm going to go to school. And I'm not saying everyone, because a lot of people do have their stuff together and they know what they're going to do. They've analyzed it, but a lot of people don't. And They just get these student loans and they say, I'm going to figure it out once I get there. It's like, no. I'm not going to give you $50,000 to help you figure it out. Like, don't get me. I'm trying. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to get started.
No, we're good, man.
All right. So I was reading one of your blog posts, man, and it made me giggle. And it was a very good question. The question was, what is the difference between being rich and being wealthy? You want to elaborate on what you define the difference as?
Yeah, actually, that was a little bit of dated, but also blogging's been a lot of fun for me. And that is, I think, my second go at blogging, one of the first posts. But I was quite proud when that one came out. A lot of research and a lot of interviews went into that one. So that really went back to my childhood in a lot of ways. If someone, had that nice car, that nice house, we described them as rich. And as I've gotten older and I've gotten more into the personal finance community and like my own wealth building journey, which for the record is a wealth building journey, not a rich building journey. I kind of started to realize that there's a lot of people out there who make multiple six figures and are broke. I've talked about this a few times before. A buddy of mine I went to college with, he and his now wife are both nurses. They probably combine household income, each 24, 25 for $250,000. He can't tell me what a Roth IRA is. He can't tell me what a 401k is, but he can tell me about the 3 times he went abroad last year and the new car he just bought for the second year in a row. Hey, he's living a very, I want to say good life, but in a lot of ways, yeah, travel, cars, nice house, doing very well. He's rich. He has a lot of income and he's spending it, but the trade-off is he has no freedom of time. Outside of the 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever he gets of PTO a year, that's it. He's asking for time off. He's still held under the thumb of his 9 to 5 or his business or his work, whatever it may be. He's got the money to spend, but he doesn't have the time freedom. Wealthy, on the other hand, is the time freedom, whether that be, fire movement, retire early, or even move down to, say, a part-time job, or even a lot of people who start their own business and do well with it describe themselves as quite wealthy because they have that time freedom. They can hop on a plane and go wherever they want tomorrow because they've got no one to answer to. They can spend more time, friends, family, building relationships because they're wealthy enough to have that excess of time. I mean, just to sum it up as a quick sentence, quick blurb, rich is an excess of money, whereas wealthy is an excess of time, which I'm basically quoting your note sheet you sent me beforehand. It's a very, very good way of summing it up. Rich is monetary freedom, wealthy is time freedom. And sometimes those go hand in hand, sometimes they don't.
And a lot of people some people might value money more than their time. And that's fine. Like, you can still be wealthy if you value your money more than time, but that's not your definition, right? It's not my definition. But
no, it not at all. Time, I say a lot, and I mean, if you've followed me on Twitter ever, you've probably seen me tweet this 100 times before. Money's great. Money, I mean, of course, I love watching my savings account, brokerage account, retirement account. So I love watching that number go up, but it doesn't really mean anything. What I'm really searching for is time freedom. Money's just the tool. It's getting me there.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, I love it. And okay, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go into because I got into it with, last night over social media with someone. I'm trying to explain the concept of being broke and not being broke, right? And there's this person, I'm not gonna say their name. I posted something about, being able to live on $20 an hour. Like, you can do it. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you spend. That's the preface of the post that I made. And this person, they came on, they agreed, like, yes, like, you can make $24,000 a year and still live a decent life and save money. It's just about how much you spend. And I went on to say, there are broke doctors, there are broke attorneys, there are broke entertainers, broke athletes. Every single profession has people in it that can be not financially in a good spot. It's not about how much you make, it's about how much you spend. if you can't manage $1,000, what makes you think you're going to be able to manage $100,000? And this person, man, I don't know. It's because she's in school to become a doctor, which is fine. But she was super duper hell bent on the fact that doctors cannot be poor. Doctors cannot be broke. Doctors, they are disciplined. They go through so much medical school and all of this. They can't. There's no such thing as a broke doctor, Joseph. No. And I'm trying to tell. I'm like, listen. I even sent. Look, this is the Dave Ramsey show. Listen to this call that he got from a broke doctor, someone who's $1 million in debt. They're never going to be able to pay it off. Listen to it. And she was extremely adamant, saying, no, like that's one person, but there are no broke doctors, blah, blah, blah. And it was super duper fresh, but her mind was made up. I mean, it was made up. It is what it is. I say all that to say no profession is safe. There are literally broke financial advisors. That tells you, well, you're shaking your head because like,
oh yeah,
that tells you. I interviewed one on my podcast, episode 16, with Joe from Stack and Benjamin. He was a financial advisor. He was a financial coach, and he was broke. So while he's sitting here telling other people how they should manage their money, he wasn't living it. And so, but this person was extremely adamant. They're like, I don't know any broke doctors, so they don't exist. And I got to the point I'm like, you know what? I can't change your mind, but just know if you make $200K a year and you spend $250K a year, you are broke.
Oh no, you are 100% correct. Well, I can't quote the statistics offhand, but how many NFL, NBA players, lottery winners are broke in 5 years? I mean, that number is upwards of 70, 80%. Also, I think it's funny that you quote the Dave Ramsey show, because I was going to quote the Total Money Makeover on the exact same subject. He's got a whole chapter about it.
Yeah. And it's just like, I said, like, look, doctors are experts in the medical field. Attorneys are experts in law field. Just because they're experts in medical does not mean they're experts in finance. That's why they go so broke, because they are so good at what they do. I admire all the doctors out there. I'm not taking any shots at any doctors, guys. I want to let you guys know I admire you guys. I appreciate everything you do. But just because you're an expert in one field doesn't mean you're an expert in every field. And finances, unfortunately, is one of those where you think you're doing better than you actually are. And that might be me. I might have an inflated ego on me doing better than I think I am, or I'm doing worse than I think I am. But I say all that to say is like, you have to be humble, right? I wouldn't go into a doctor's office and give them all of my symptoms, and they give me a diagnosis back, and I say, nah, I'm not. That doesn't exist. Like, no, like, you're the professional. You've been doing this for years. The same way a doctor shouldn't go to a finance guy and be like, yeah, I went to school for 8 years. You went to school for 4, so I know what I'm doing. So I'm sorry.
Those are no. You've got a really good point. No need to apologize, because I mean, yeah, like you said, doctors, nurses, attorneys, super, super smart people. Unfortunately, personal finance isn't taught in law school. It's not taught in medical school. And super smart, great people, not taking a shot, attorneys, doctors, anybody, but personal finance, in my opinion, I feel we probably share the opinion here, is its own school of thought that isn't exactly. There's only so much you can do to figure it out for yourself. You kind of got to dive into and look into what others are saying.
Yeah. And no doctor is going to be like, hey guys, I'm broke. Like they're not going to be like, hey, I know I just drove up in my nice BMW, but I haven't paid my car payment in 3 months. Like, they're not going to say that. No, nobody's going to say that. It's not just doctors or lawyers. No one is going to come out and say, guys, I'm behind 3 months on my bills. So just because they're not saying it and just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I used to subscribe to that thought, like, doctors, they can't be poor. Attorneys, they can't be poor. They went to school all their life. But then you listen to people like Dave Ramsey, who talk to these people on a daily basis, and he asks them the hard questions. And you're like, wow, this is a reality check. Like,
really is, though.
Yeah. But I do love, like, your example of rich is an excess of money. and being wealthy is an excess of time. I 100% agree with it, man. I 100% agree. So, Joseph, what are some of your short-term goals that you hope to accomplish within the next 6 months to a year?
Well, I guess, first off, I'm getting married in October. So that's a little more than 6 months off, but depending on when this comes out, we're paying for all of that in cash, every penny of it. So that is A1 on my platter right now. I am getting that done. Of course, number two, I want to max out my Roth IRA this year. Never actually done that before, but I think this is the year. I'm calling it.
So obviously, if you're paying for it with cash, you have a wedding budget.
Yes.
And you're tracking where the money's going and being very meticulous, even though you're getting what you want. But how you spoke a little bit about it earlier. I kind of want to bring it back a little bit. How has talking with your spouse about finances, like I call it getting financially naked with each other, how have you found that have been? Has it been a challenge at times? Just how has that been?
I will say I'm extremely lucky. I'm marrying someone who is just as, if not more, driven in the financial world than I am. But at first, it was a little bit of a difficult talk at first. I mean, when I kind of started realizing I need to make changes in my life, we were maybe 6 months into the relationship. So that was, early on talk. I was like, hey, we gotta slow down. If this is gonna work, we gotta figure something out. And I mean, she was, I don't want to say hesitant at first, but it was a bit of a mindset change for her. Her background isn't, I guess, as much personal finance as mine is. After we kept talking about it, 4, 5, 6 months later, we kind of started realizing, hey, we're on the same page with this. We need to have a serious talk. And I'd say around the 1 year mark of our relationship, we started going, hey, this is serious, that we could definitely see this going somewhere. And I mean, here we are now getting married, so it definitely went somewhere. We kind of realized this is something super serious, because I can't quote the statistics, but it's 60-70% of divorces in the US are caused by money fights. So I think that was when we started getting on the same page, realizing, we really want this to work, and being on the same page financially is huge. It's arguably, right below being on the same page emotionally, and making the relationship last and making it work long term.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys don't have the same, at least, goals when it comes to finances, you're always going to be in combat with each other, because they want something and you don't, or you want something and they don't. So I think it's a really good thing to be on the same page. I always suggest having the money talks, especially before you're married. Understand where's the family going and how are you going to get there financially. And
100%.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a surprise.
No.
So, Joseph, what are some of your long-term goals for something you can accomplish within the next 5 to 10 years? And what does the finish line look like for you?
That is a really good question. I usually operate on a 5-year plan, so I can give you that one pretty straightforward. But once we get past that, I start getting a little fuzzy. Of course, we're both carrying a little bit of debt to the wedding between cars, student loans, etc. So within 5 years, I want to have every penny of that paid off for both of us. We're also looking to get into real estate investing. So I'm thinking 5 years from now, I want at least a 5-property portfolio, multifamily properties. Which I think between the two of those will put us at completely financially free in the next 10 years. Every time I say this on a podcast or on social media, I kind of hope that my boss isn't listening, but I'm a firm believer in the FIRE movement. So I'm hoping, actually, no, I'm not even hoping. I'm believing, I'm telling you right now that within the next 10 years, both my wife and I will be entirely financially free and either able to quit our jobs or have already quit our jobs, because we've got, dreams outside of the 9 to 5, other business ventures we'd like to follow for ourselves. There's a whole big world out there, and I'm going to see every inch of it. I'm speaking that into existence, and I do that every single day.
Yeah, and I mean, every single day you're taking the steps in order to get there. So you're not just saying it, right? You're not just talking the talk. Like anybody can say, "Oh, I'm going to retire in 5 years," but it's actually the things that you're doing today, living on a budget, investing in different asset classes, whether it's stocks or real estate. Boy, I love me some real estate. But you're actually walking the walk. You're not just talking the talk because I told somebody this the other day, they were talking about how the new retirement age is 67 and a half. I'm like, look, man, do not let others set the bar for you, right? No one should be telling you when you can retire. You should be telling yourself when you're going to retire. You got to shift your mindset. So I love that. I love that.
Oh yeah, retirement is a dollar amount, not an age. That's what I tell every single person. The moment the money's there, congrats, you're retired or can retire. You don't have to wait till you're 60, 65, 67.
Yeah, exactly. Just because, and then there are people who don't get to retire, right? So it's definitely not an age, right? Because we know 70-year-olds who are still working because they can't retire. So that should show you that there is no age, and it has other factors that you should be striving for.
I mean, I'll vouch for that. My 9 to 5, I'm a 401k manager. I have a lot of 70, 80-year-olds who are still working 40-hour weeks with 100,000 or less saved. They're there and they exist. It's not an age.
Yeah, and those are people in finance. So guys, anybody can be broke, okay? Anybody can. This is proof, right? It's not just doctors, not just attorneys, not just McDonald's workers. Anyone can be broke, including the people that you're getting financed. I could be broke. I could be lying about everything I talk about in this podcast. I could have no properties, no retirement, none of that. I could be broke, okay? Whether I am or not, you can decide. But I'm just saying it's possible. And yeah. So, Joseph, let's go into the final questions of the show. These are the same questions I ask every single guest, just to get to know you personally and get to pick your brain a little bit. Everyone has their own definition of what it means to have financial peace. What is your definition?
I mean, I think financial peace comes with being wealthy, comes with that time freedom, Of course, for everyone, it's different. You may love your 9 to 5. You may hate your 9 to 5. You may want to do something else. I hate to say this, you may just want to sit on the couch all day. Don't recommend it, but for some people, that's what it is. I mean, for me, financial peace, by definition, is freedom. It's knowing that I'm not going to run out of money. I've got plenty of money. I'm not worried about where my next meal is coming from. I'm not worried about the roof over my head. And I'm not worried about much because I know that I am comfortable in my finances and I've got more than enough to sustain myself.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. So if there are listeners out there that want to start building wealth and they have no clue where to get started, what would you tell them?
I mean, hey, we've already talked about the Dave Ramsey track, so I'm going to kind of start there. Find an online professional if you want to. We're both open to talking anytime. I'm sure there's 100 others out there just like us. Find somebody, reach out if you'd like one-on-one help, but definitely get on a budget, pay off your bad debts, and then, start investing, get your life in order. Because first thing you have to do before you can start improving it, take stock of what you have, your income, your expenses, and get all of that together. Then start, debt, investing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you have to stop the bleeding, some would say. Like you have to understand where all your money is going. That's why I love that you mentioned a budget, because if you don't know where your money is going, you have no ability to save. You have no ability to invest because you don't know what you have in your stock. So if there's one thing you could advise everyone to avoid doing to build wealth, what would it be?
Kind of stuck between basically the don't spend more than you earn. Don't live above your means, because that's when, bad debts come, credit card debt, personal loans, those are wealth killers. And like you said, if you're making 250,000 a year, but you're spending 300,000, income doesn't matter. You're broke. So just don't keep up with the Joneses. Don't live outside of your means. Save as much as you can, to say the least.
Yeah. Don't keep up with the Joneses, because the Joneses, at the end of the day, the Joneses really don't care about you. The Joneses are just doing what they want to do. Like they're not looking back at you and being like, "Oh, I'm better than them." There might be some out there, but the majority of us are not, right? Okay, this is the one. If there's someone out there that doesn't believe they can reach financial peace due to their age, their race, their religion, their sexual orientation, etc., what would you say to change their mind?
Well, front page of my website, if you get on there, first thing that says is that I firmly believe anyone, anywhere, anytime, regardless of your circumstances, can win and be good with money. I mean, that said, of course, several, especially minorities, at least here in the United States, are at a disadvantaged state. I'm not going to disregard that in any way, shape, or form. I did have a bit of a lucky start coming from, a secure enough family to secure enough background, but I firmly believe that growing wealth is a mindset. And once you get on the right track, doesn't matter where you're from, what you're like, it's time rather than, situation.
Yeah, I love it, man. I like to use the analogy as like if we're all on a track to financial peace, right? You might have one obstacle in your way. I might have 3 obstacles. Someone else might have 26 obstacles. I don't care, right? I truly and utterly do not care how many obstacles you have to avoid to get to financial peace, to get to becoming wealthy. As long as you do it, all that's going to do, I'm going to admire you more. Like, I had 3 obstacles and I almost didn't make it. So you went through 26. I admire you for that. But if you're going to be that one to just say, look, I have more obstacles than you, so I'm not going to try, I can't change your mind on that one. So it's hard. It really is. And I try, but it's hard, man.
Oh yeah, and you can definitely only change someone whose mind who wants to be changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny because ever since I started asking this question, I've only asked it, to 3 or 4 guests now, going forward. Everyone so far acknowledges that it's different for everyone, that some people have it harder than others. But the one thing that everyone had in common so far is regardless of how hard it is, you can still do it. So it's showing a pattern, like successful people will find a way, no matter what, they will find a way. If there's 10 people telling them no, they're going to find that one person that says maybe. And then they're going to find that next person to say yes, and help you and guide you. So, and it's also great to, surround yourself with people who look like you, who have the same obstacles as you. That way you can figure out how they ended up getting around these obstacles and you can repeat it, because none of us have to reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I've said several times, if you're going through something, chances are someone else has too. Just reach out for help.
100%, man. 100%. So Joseph, where can people find out more about you?
So I'm all over Twitter and Instagram at jhadawayfc. I also have my own website with my own personal blog at hadawayfinance.com. Or you can check out my podcast. And I guess we're kind of building into a little bit of a media brand with news and other financial articles at workhardretireearly.com.
Absolutely, guys. And I'm going to link his Twitter. I'm going to link all of his social medias, his website, his podcast, everything in the show notes below. Of course, we reference Dave Ramsey a lot. So I'm going to link his website in the show notes below. That way you guys can get in touch, because a lot of people, as you guys can see, if you've been listening to these episodes, you can see a lot of people, although they don't agree with Dave Ramsey 100%, everybody's got the little nuggets that they get from him. And he's got awesome resources. So I always suggest you guys check that out. But also check out Joseph's stuff, man. Maybe you won't agree with 100% of everything he comes up with, but you might get the one thing. You might get the 2-3 things out of the content and you can implement in your own personal life. But Joseph, man, I really appreciate you coming on today and having the interview and having the conversation, man.
Hey, I really appreciate you having me on. This was a good time.
Absolutely, man. I hope you have a blessed rest of your day, man. And I'm going to hold you to all these things that you said, man. Right. I want to see you in 10 years having enough passive income to retire, man. Maybe we can plan a double trip to Bermuda. I don't know.
Hey, let's do it. I'm here for it. I put all this on the podcast, everything. I want you to hold me to it. I'm telling you right now, and you're going to watch me build it.
I'm gonna gladly. I'm gonna bring my popcorn. I'm gonna bring my lawn chair, and I'm gonna watch you, man. I'm gonna be cheering you on the whole way, man.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you so much, Joseph, man. You have a blessed rest of your day.
You too.
And guys, that was my interview with Mr. Joseph Hadaway. Like we talked about, he's got his own podcast, the Work Hard, Retire Early podcast, where he puts out amazing stuff. And I really hope you guys got some of the great information he was putting out. For example, the best part that the part that I love the most is the difference between being rich and being wealthy. I mean, it's not that hard to be rich, guys. It's really not. It's not. I know it may seem like that, especially when you're in a living paycheck to paycheck cycle, but it's all a mathematical formula of increasing your income and lowering your expenses in order to get rich. But to become wealthy, to start getting your time back and start delegating your time instead of putting it into work, but you're able to put your time into things like your family or your own businesses. That's what I think everyone should strive for. I think you become rich on the journey to become wealthy, but I don't think you can be wealthy if you're in that cycle of living paycheck to paycheck and, just trying to make ends meet or living in a constant fear or a constant feeling of you're running, just trying to survive instead of trying to thrive. So I really hope that you guys got a lot of value from my interview and the talk we had. It was a great interview. With that being said, guys, of course, you guys know that if you're just not getting enough out of the podcast, you can always schedule a one-on-one coaching session with me where we can do a deep dive into your own finances and really get you on that wealth building journey and help you find financial peace. Because guess what? Your financial peace isn't the same as my financial peace, right? But with that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here. It's been a long day. I'm your host, James Bowman. And always remember, you're only as secure as your ability to perform. So spend your life accumulating assets that can perform for you. Later, guys.